Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic Keystone, Episode 3, X-Men 97. I told you before, in Episode 2 of Deadpool and Wolverine, this was one I contemplated for a long time. This is the one I really wanted to do. And the reason for that is because I consider it to be one of the best shows from Marvel that I've ever seen. Since Endgame came out especially, I'm going to put this as my top three shows. And I'll tell you what they are in no particular order. Number one is Moon Knight. If you have not given it a chance, please do. The reason I like Moon Knight is because of the actor itself. The actor himself is Oscar Isaac, and he portrays the character of Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a character that has this multiple personality disorder. And so the way that those multiple personalities are displayed in the show, perfection. It's amazing to see. So I'm not even talking about the plot or anything like that, but just watching the actor switch from these different personalities is one of the reasons why I consider it to be great. The second show, I mean, it just you just have to put it at the top is What If, the animated show. So, what if the concept of it, pretty self-explanatory, but it takes place in the MCU where, I mean, technically in the multiverse, where any sort of situations that occurred, what if it happened a different way? Or what if this happened instead? So, that show, I mean, it's unlimited potential, the types of stories you could come up with. And not just that, but the way they weaved it all together. So, spoiler alert. I mean, season one episode, I think it was 9 and 10 are the last two episodes. That's when it kind of leads to Ultron and being the one who gets the Infinity Stones. He's able to travel the multiverse, and he realizes that he can conquer pretty much the multiverse. And you have this character called the Watcher who watches over the multiverse. He's just observing the multiverse and the things that happen. Except this time he's obviously seeing the destruction of the multiverse, and so he tries to do something about it. Goes against everything he believes in, of course. He has this really awesome fight, and in the end, he creates this like multiversal Avengers type team. And all the characters from the previous episodes, the main characters, they join that team. So, yeah, it just sounds epic, and it was. That's what it's meant to be. Like it's impossible to not be an incredible show. So again, those are the two, and X Men '97 is the third. I consider to be my top three. The reason I consider it to be an awesome show is because it came with a theme. Now, this show, X Men '97, is the continuation of a show that happened in the '90s. I think it came out in 1992. So, I'll be honest, I did not watch the original show. I was born in '94. The show came out in '92. So, I watched X Men Evolution. I remember watching X Men Evolution, but I never watched this original show. And part of the theme that I enjoy from this show is I consider it a theme of redemption. Redemption in the sense of it's a continuation from that original show. Let's bring it back and give it the proper continuation slash ending slash new beginning. That's what I mean by redemption here. Is it's not just like I am redeeming myself in the sense of like I think I was done wrong and so I'm able to do right, but those concepts of the continuation and the new beginning, right? Not just like the continuation part or the satisfying end. Now, the reason that I enjoy that theme is because I think it reflects well with what's been happening lately in Marvel content. Episode 2 is about Deadpool and Wolverine. I think it had a similar theme of redemption. And that is because this is the end of the Fox characters, but it's also the continuation of those Fox characters. And even the team that he puts together in Deadpool and Wolverine, right? You have the force against, or the resistance against, Cassandra Nova. You don't have Captain America. Uh, you think you do for like a second until he says "flame on," and then it's the Human Torch. I don't know if his character even got redeemed really because he died. So I don't know if he was given that proper. I mean, the whole purpose of this redemption arc of Deadpool and Wolverine was, let's give these characters who didn't get a proper end off or send off, give them a proper send off, or at least just recognize them for who they are and what they did. So I think the Human Torch, or Chris Evans' character, just sort of a throwaway. Brought him back from Fantastic Four, but didn't play a huge purpose as it did for other characters like Blade. So the reason I mentioned Blade is because Ryan Reynolds has said in interviews that Blade, which came out in the 90s, was really the catalyst for superhero movies like the original X-Men that came out in the 2000s, the Spider-Man movies with Tobey. I mean, the original Spider-Man ones. You don't have those without Blade. Blade is the reason that you have those types of movies because Blade did really well. And so I know we talk about like Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man a lot. That's what people talk about. Is the MCU is what it is today. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is what it is today because of Iron Man, because of Robert Downey Jr. And if you don't have that character, you don't have the MCU, which is true. It's not to take away from RDJ, but it's to give to Blade. It's to give that credit and respect to Wesley Snipes. And so that's what this movie brought, was it brought redemption to some of those characters from way back when. Another character like Gambit, who never actually got a chance, which, in his case, his movie, Channing Tatum's movie Gambit, was stuck in the developmental void, right? So he was so passionate about playing the character, and it never came to fruition. He never got the chance, and ultimately it was canceled. So all those jokes in the movie about, like, I think I was born here in the void, it's got some background story to it. There's some context there, which is like he never actually got the chance to be live action, to be in real life, to be, his own movie and character. And he has this quote of when he's going into battle against Cassandra Nova's forces, and he says, "Ooh, I'm about to make a name for myself here." And he talks about, like, when you get out of here, like, tell them what you saw today, right? Like, he's recognizing that this is where he's getting that chance to redeem himself. And so that theme of redemption, even with Wolverine, you know, Wolverine, the one that we knew from Logan, that sacrificed himself to save his daughter and got that proper ending, that Wolverine is different from the one in this movie. And obviously that's made apparent, but the reason I mention that is because even this Wolverine needs redemption. It's the worst Wolverine, the one that let the X-Men die, the one that let the mutants die. And so even this Wolverine needs redemption. That's what this movie is about. That's the theme of continuing the Fox characters, giving them a satisfying ending, and also giving them a new story to form. That's what X-Men 97 is. It's a continuation of the original X-Men series, but it's also X-Men is with Marvel now, right? Like, we're able to continue with brand new stories, and that's what this is. It's also about the characters themselves. So, not everybody agrees, but some people say, myself included, it's hard to give characters their due respect in the time frame of a movie, like Cyclops. Cyclops in the original X-Men movies, the live action movies, he's considered, yes, in X-Men 1 especially, sort of the leader of the X-Men. Like he's the one that's standing in front of them. He's the one that sometimes is telling them what to do. But he's not really given the full respect of how to utilize his powers. What does he do in the movies? He just uses them to like blast people at times. In this show, you quickly see Cyclops is the unanimous, like, no doubt, he's the leader of the X-Men from the very beginning, and he knows how to utilize his powers properly. So let's get into X-Men 97. What I want to talk about is not to recap the episodes, but to go through some of the character arcs and some of my favorite moments. And we're going to start with Cyclops. So, Cyclops, the very first episode, is titled "To Me, My X-Men." Okay, now Cyclops, from the very beginning, he is portrayed like the leader. So they're in this like helicopter slash plane, and everybody falls out. Everybody's got this like superhero sort of falling out and going to land. And what you ultimately think of is, okay, who's going to save him? Who's going to come and grab Cyclops? Which mutant that can fly is going to come and grab Cyclops? Because that's what you see in movies normally, is like, if I can't fly, someone's going to come and help me. But you quickly see like he talks to the team and says, great job, see you on the ground. And he looks down and he's got this like intense moment of firing his lasers on the ground, and it slows his fall, and he falls with a super heroic landing, and he says the famous line, "To me, my X-Men." And the X-Men form around him. It's like the equivalent of Avengers Assemble from Captain America. Quickly you see from the very beginning, Cyclops is the leader of the X-Men. He can do so much more. So what I thought was really interesting about this scene is the writer of the series, Bo DeMaio, he actually mentioned in an interview where he said that the reason the scene came to fruition was because his mom reminded him that when he was playing with a Cyclops toy as a child, that he did this, where Cyclops was falling and he pretended that the lasers from his eyes were slowing his fall. And he's able to make that now into this animated show. So, again, one of my favorite moments, but also just one of my favorite character arcs, the redemption of Cyclops, and it's apparent from the very beginning. The only thing that kind of disrupts this is the ending of the episode of episode 1, which is Magneto is there, and for some background context, Charles Xavier in the original series was assassinated at the end of that show, and that's kind of where it left off. So a year has passed since then, and Magneto came back, and now he's got the will of Charles Xavier, and in that will it says Magneto is in control of the X-Men and in control of Xavier's school. So quickly you see that, yes, the entire episode you thought that Cyclops was going to be the leader of the X-Men, but the conflict here is that the actual control from Professor X was given to Magneto. And that's portraying the conflict that's to come. Because Scott thinks that, like, he is, like, why didn't the professor choose me? And rightfully so. Because he's been, like, his right-hand man the entire time. So that's kind of, like, my take on Cyclops especially. And he has incredible moments throughout the entire show. So some of, my incredible moments that I can remember that I just loved was, yes, in this first episode, but also in the last episode. So Cyclops is on this something called Asteroid M. And Asteroid M is like this asteroid it's like the headquarters of Magneto, you could say. Similar to if you watch Justice League, the show, the animated show, they have like the JL Tower in outer space. Think of it like that. And so Magneto is in this tower, and what Scott has to do is it's pretty much the asteroid is heading towards Earth, and Scott has this sick moment where he's just trying to destroy the asteroid before it gets to Earth and before it starts to destroy Earth. And so he, whips out the blast, his optic blast from his eyes, and he's like just going crazy, like trying to destroy the asteroid. So the reason I mention it is because episode 10, you can look it up, on YouTube or something if you really wanted to. But those are my top couple moments, at least, from Cyclops, which portray, him being able to do like so much more, him being a leader and understanding that like this is bigger than him. So what led to that moment was the premise of Cyclops' journey here. All right. He's shown as the leader of the X-Men. He's married to Jean Grey, and she's pregnant at the beginning of this show. She's going to have a child, and she does eventually in the show, and they have a baby, and his name is Nathan. Now, there's quickly some twists and turns a part of this. So I'm not trying to recap the show. I'm just portraying Scott's journey throughout the show. So Nathan is kidnapped by a villain named Mr. Sinister as a baby. And when they are able to find him, they figure out that Nathan is infected with like this disease, and there's no cure for it. So they have to send him with a mutant that can travel through time. And they say, take him to the future, and hopefully there's a cure for him in the future. So on one hand, you have Cyclops, who wants to be the leader of the X-Men, but it's taken away because in the will of Charles Xavier, it says Magneto is now the leader of the X-Men. So that's taken away from him. And then the other hand, you have his child also taken away from him. Now, another piece to add to this is you also figure out that Jean Grey, his wife and the mother of his child, is actually a clone. And so this clone was created by Mr. Sinister way back when in the early 90s show. And so she leaves and the original Jean Grey shows up. But obviously, like, he hasn't spent time with this original Jean Grey. He's spent time with this clone Jean Grey. And so he's had a kid with the clone Jean Grey. And so now he's separated from the clone Jean as well. She left, and she's like, I'm going to be this new person named Madeline Pryor, and I'll live my own life and figure out my own path. And she ultimately goes to be one of the leaders of Genosha, which is the mutant nation. Okay? So just the point here is Cyclops has this journey of conflict throughout the entire show. But when we get to the ending, when he's destroying the asteroid, he has come to a conclusion. I'm going to sacrifice myself for the greater good, despite not getting what I want, despite not being the leader of the X-Men, despite my family situation, despite not having my child with me and growing up with my child. That's the character arc of Cyclops, which I really enjoyed. Like, it again, like, done justice. He got his due. The second character that I loved was Magneto. Dude, I can't tell you how many clips of Magneto I've watched over and over and over and over and over on YouTube. Probably over 1,000 times. Because he's got incredible moments. He's portrayed as this anti-hero, and it's the perfect balance. So pre-X-Men 97, he is, the opposite of Charles Xavier, who is trying to find the balance with humans and mutants to live side by side. And Magneto, who is a Holocaust survivor, his parents died in the Holocaust, is of the opposite, where, no, we're not going to get along. Like, we got to get rid of them before they get rid of us. But now, because his friend is dead, he is trying to turn a new leaf in the sense of, like, I will do, like, him and Charles were best friends, just like in the movies, the live action movies, especially the early ones. You see it a little bit more. like an X-Men First Class. You see that friendship grow. And so just like that, you have someone who's lost a friend. And though he did not originally agree with that vision, he's going to try and fulfill it just because that his friend's dead. And so that's his whole story arc. And he portrays this, anti-hero with the perfect balance. Some of my favorite moments of Magneto. In episode 2, he is put on trial, and by the UN actually. And at trial, this person named the Executioner, he comes with this like radiation gun, and he fires it at Magneto. And Storm jumps in front of him, and we figure out that she loses her powers permanently. And so Magneto is pissed off that this happened, and he forms this like magnetic shield. And here's another tidbit. So another reason why I really liked Magneto in this series is because in the live action show, I don't think you really see his magnetic powers. More so, you see his controlling of metal. So in this show, like he has this like magnetic shield that he creates. He creates like EMPs. Like he has the power to do to be the master of magnetism, which is well beyond what he does, like as controlling bullets and their trajectories and moving satellites and boats and things like that as he did in the live action movies. So he creates this like magnetic shield around himself and around some of the UN council members, and he takes this executioner guy with him too. And he leaves the trial and he goes into outer space, and he basically gives them a speech, and he says, you know, I'm trying, I'm trying to fulfill the wishes of my friend, which is for us to live in harmony, like side by side. But he gives them, I don't want to say it's an ultimatum, but I mean, he says, like, I could squash you people like a bug. Like, I could squash this person who took away the powers of Storm, but he doesn't. And he ultimately says, don't provoke me. Like, I'll get along. But don't provoke me again. And that's like the warning that he gives to them. And it's a really awesome scene. And he brings them all back down and he spares them. And again, it's like the perfect anti-hero sort of behavior. Like he's back and forth. A couple other things about Magneto is I found his relationship with Rogue a bit odd. I mean, maybe I didn't have the context from the original show, but I just thought it was weird how they have this like romantic relationship, or they did. So Rogue as a child was under the care of Magneto, I think, and as they grew older, I mean, still, like right now in the show, he seems like a 70, 80, 90-year-old, and she's like 20, which it just like comes off odd. But whatever, whatever. And so, the part of the show is like that conflict. Like he does things because he appreciates her, because he loves her. So in later episodes, some of the greatest scenes occur, which is episode 5, at least. In episode 5, which is about the attack on Genosha. So a lot of things, happen in the episode. The last like 10 minutes, last like 5 or 10 minutes is when it gets intense. And what happens is these robots called Sentinels, they start to attack Genosha. Remember, Genosha is a mutant nation, and it was just admitted into the United Nations. And so you have Magneto is there, Rogue is there, and Gambit are there. And Magneto was just asked to be the leader of the country, and he agreed. And so this Sentinel, gigantic, like prime main Sentinel, starts attacking and pretty much destroying all the mutants. And it's literally considered the genocide of Genosha. And so as this is happening, Magneto is he has some incredible scenes. The first one that I remember is he is knocked. He has this like shield around him, this magnetic shield, and the Sentinel knocks him into this gigantic statue of Charles Xavier that's on the island, and it falls down and it kills it kills more mutants. And excuse me. And what happens is he's tearing up. He remembers things like the Holocaust. He has these like scenes of like memories. And he thinks of his parents, and he thinks of these people that are dying, the mutants that he was supposed to protect. And he has this quote. He says, "They will be avenged." And he, with his powers, grabs this train, uses it like a whip, and starts to attack this Sentinel. And I thought the symbolism here was something to look at, because this train represented this mode of transportation that was used for his family and for people he knew, so even people like himself as well, to get to the concentration camps for the Holocaust. And so, excuse me. And so he's using that as a weapon in this case against the Sentinel, this gigantic Sentinel. It doesn't affect the Sentinel much, a couple attacks, but what happens is the Sentinel starts overpowering Magneto. Magneto has a couple mutants around him, including this like child mutant. He looks to the mutant and I think speaks in German and says everything will be okay. And the Sentinel kills them and wipes them all out. Part of this episode is another one of my characters who I grew an appreciation for was Gambit. So the title of the episode of episode 5 was Remember It. And what happened here is Gambit also has this thing for Rogue, and Rogue is like in the middle of them two, like Magneto and Gambit. She's also like kind of unsure of which way she wants to go and be with, but Gambit is just like always there for her. So she explodes on, she sees like this happening. This happened to Magneto. Magneto actually held those two back. He didn't let her get involved. He used his powers to like pin them to a light post, and they witnessed Magneto die. And then Gambit, the reason that this was the one moment that everybody knows about if you watch this show, which is he starts to attack the Sentinel. The Sentinel has like a claw that goes through Gambit and pretty much looks like it's killing him. And then Gambit kind of smiles and says, "The name's Gambit." And he says, "Remember it." And then he uses his powers, which are a little bit different from what you see in the Deadpool. Maybe it's the same, actually. I'm going to say it's around the same. So he can create energy from his body and power up things. So like normally he's like powering up cards, and he uses them and they can explode. What he does in this case is he grabs a hold of the claw that's going through his body from the Sentinel, and he charges up the entire Sentinel and explodes. And so the Sentinel explodes and he ends up dying, and that's the reason that he saved a couple lives perhaps that were left over. But that was like the one scene that really was amazing that like I rewatched a ton of times. But that's a little bit about Magneto and Gambit up until this point. Rogue for the next couple episodes after this is fun to watch in this show. So if you're familiar with Rogue from like the first X-Men movie, she is somewhat of a excuse me. She's somewhat of a main character, but her powers are portrayed as just like she takes powers but tries not to, which is similar in this case. But I think the background story of her up until this point is maybe in the original show. I think I read somewhere that she took the powers of Captain Marvel and they for some reason stuck around. I can't remember. But she has like super strength and she can fly. And that's like always. I don't know if that's like an original power of hers or if she took that from someone and it just was permanent. I honestly can't remember. So she goes on this rampage after this massacre of Genosha, and she starts to go and like question the creators of the Sentinel robots, right? So his name is Boulevard Trask, and he's the same character that created the Sentinels in X-Men: Days of Future Past, the live-action film, which, by the way, incredible film. Also, the best X-Men live-action film that's out there. So Trask, same character that created the Sentinels in that movie, is the same in this animated show, and she's trying to track him down. She comes across great cameos. She comes across Captain America. It's a very different Captain America from the one in the MCU, from the one in like the actual live action that we know as Chris Evans. Civil War would not have happened with this Captain America that's in X-Men '97. The reason I say that is because he's very by the books. Our Captain America from the MCU is not like that. So you have these Sokovia Accords, and they're basically saying, you know, you guys have caused all this trouble, and we want to monitor you and control you as the Avengers. And Captain America is like, nah, bruh. Like, we ain't having that. And so in X-Men '97, he's like the total opposite. He's like, yeah, we go by the books. Like, we're run by the government. And so he's on the same team as the general that is technically a part of those Sokovia Accords in the MCU. His name is Thaddeus Ross, or no, sorry, Thaddeus. Yeah, it's Thaddeus Ross, I think. So yeah, she awesome cameos at the end of the day is what I'm getting at. But she goes on this rampage, and that's kind of her story arc here. Is even in her relationship, she's back and forth, and also in her character arc, she's back and forth. Like she's hero, she kind of switches to villain. She's not villain, but she does some things. So at some point, she finds Trask, and what does she do? She throws him off the roof of a building. She literally threw him off, and everybody around her, the X-Men are around her, and they're like, "This is what we're doing now. Like, we're killing people, you know." Um, the guy didn't end up dying though. Trask, he ended up becoming a mutant human hybrid Sentinel. I'm sorry, yeah, yeah. So background story here is Mr. Sinister was the one that orchestrated the Genosha massacre, but he's not working alone. He's working with someone named Bastion. Bastion is the big bad of the series so far, of season one of X-Men '97. And so Bastion has come up with this way to build mutant human, sorry, not mutant, human sentinel hybrids. Call them prime sentinels. And so they're not activated by default. It's an operation that takes place on humans, and he can activate them when he wants. And so when Rogue threw Trask off the building and thought he died, his hybrid mode was actually activated, and he came back as a hybrid sentinel. Now he's got like these invincible like powers, basically. Not invincible, but he's super powerful. And so he starts like attacking Rogue, and he knocks her unconscious, and he attacks the other X-Men, and he's laying them out like left and right until Cable shows up. So Cable, who's also in Deadpool 2, played by the same actor that played Thanos, Josh Brolin. Cable is in X-Men '97, and Cable makes his first appearance in the same Genosha Massacre episode, episode 5. And he is seen as coming back in time from the future, and he's warning Madeline Pryor. So the clone of Jean Grey, like I said, she went to Genosha, and she became, after the whole like clone fiasco stuff, she joined the Council of Genosha. And he comes back and he tries to warn her that an attack is coming, but he can't prevent it. So it's called a fixed point, or an absolute point, I think is the other name for it. They're synonymous, I believe. And so it's something in which it has to occur. It's something that you can't prevent. So an example would be like in the What If animated show. There's a What If. I forgot her name, but the girlfriend of Doctor Strange. Like, what if she died or something like that? And so Doctor Strange, like he's driving just as he normally is in the movie, the first Doctor Strange movie, and he has his car crash and he loses his the ability of like his hands and stuff like that, which are important for him because he's a surgeon. And in this case, his girlfriend is in the car with him, but she ends up dying. So he goes to figure out like how to prevent that from happening. He becomes Doctor Strange, learns magic, and tries to reverse time. Every time he does, she still dies. So he's done it like countless number of times. He's tried everything, gone off the wrong path. He becomes this like evil person, learns like dark magic type stuff, but it just keeps happening until he destroys his universe because of it. It's a fixed point. It has to happen. In this case, the massacre of Genosha was a fixed point. It had to happen, and that's why Cable couldn't prevent it from happening. He later describes how his future is like apocalyptic, like it's run by Sentinels, very similar to Days of Future Past. There's like a scene at the beginning of the movie, of the live action movie, where we see Sentinels are kind of running the show and mutants are the slaves, and that's the whole purpose of them. And that's something he's trying to prevent. So he can't prevent it. He gave that warning, and she recognized that it was Nathan, her son. So they sent Nathan into the future with this mutant. Like I said, I think I mentioned that they had to send him into the future to find a cure. And so she recognizes that Cable is actually Nathan from the future, and but she ended up dying in the massacre as well. And so Cable plays a part. Cable comes back when Trask turns into this Sentinel hybrid, and he's able to kind of use his technology from the future and just temporarily stop Trask. And he joins the X-Men in this case. And he joins them for the rest of the series. And it was fun to see Cable part of the series because I never saw him too much besides Deadpool 2. But in this series, I think he's done justice in the sense of like, I mean, at least for me, I didn't know much about him, and I enjoyed his background story of being like the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, and in the end, he they came together as a family, and in the end, they as a family, like his parents saved him. They tried they made the sacrifice to save him. And what I mean by that is, if you recall, I mentioned Cyclops. He was using his like optic beams against Asteroid M and kind of like trying to destroy the asteroid before it got to Earth. They had come to Cable and kind of said to him like, "Hey, we don't know if we're gonna make it out of this. Pretty much, we're gonna sacrifice ourselves to save you, and we didn't get to say goodbye the first time. We want to say it now." So, from the beginning until the end, I enjoyed Cable's journey as a character and his family arc. Um, so those were a couple of characters that and their arcs that I really enjoyed. And there were some really awesome moments. Some of the Magneto moments that I didn't mention would be when he had this worldwide EMP. So when these Sentinels get activated, and what's his name, Bastion, he activates an army of these human Sentinel hybrids. He's basically operated on a lot of people, and he activates all of them. And they're these like all powerful beings, like all powerful hybrids, and they're handling the X-Men, just totally, taking care of them. What happens is Magneto, we thought he was dead, right? We thought he died on Genosha. Turns out he's actually a prisoner of Bastion. He survived, but the leader of the UN is also there too. One of the leaders of the UN is also there. And after Genosha, she, who was also there, is recognizing something, which is when you witness machines destroying people, you are not saving people, you are killing them, right? He thinks that this is a part of something he calls Operation Zero Tolerance, OZT, and that's what his organization is called, Bastions. Because so far, what is tolerance? Tolerance is we don't get along, we are just going along. And that's what they've done so far with mutants. Humans have tried to just go along with mutants, but they're not trying to get along with them as much as people like Charles want them to. And so he's built this sentinel hybrid, human hybrid, in the with the idea of we're trying to replace you. We're not trying to be you. We're not trying to get along with you. We want to get rid of you. And that's what Genosha was a sign of, is no, we're not here to be alongside you. And so when she witnessed all this happening, I mean, she said, like, my thought is, this is messed up. And, it gets you to think about, like, real world events too, where people, I mean, we would wish our leaders could witness, when they witness events like that happening, genocides happening, when they witness, massacres happening, that you're on the right side of history. And when lives are lost, when people are killed, that you don't still stand with the oppressor, that you open your eyes. And that's what happened here. So she frees Magneto. And when she's questioned by Bastion, she says Magneto was right. And what was he right about? His thought process pre X-Men 97. So far he's been trying to, do what his friend wanted, right? But remember he said in the second episode, don't provoke me. And now he's been provoked. So he goes to the North Pole and he sets out this worldwide EMP, this electromagnetic pulse, where he shuts down the entire world's electricity, and all of the Sentinel hybrids are also shut down along with it. And with this, you have like awesome cameos. You see Spider-Man from the original series. You see Daredevil. You see so many cameos. Iron Man and Captain America. It was probably the scene that I rewatched on YouTube maybe like 10,000 times. And let me quickly look up like what episode that was. I think it was episode 8, I want to say. So if you want to like look it up on YouTube, you can look up something like Magneto, worldwide EMP or something like that, or awesome X-Men 97 awesome Magneto moments, because that's definitely one of them. Yeah, I mean he does that, and then what we also figure out is, I wanted to say that was one of my probably my favorite moment from X-Men 97. That scene where he did that. After this is when I figure out that Charles Xavier is actually alive. What? Yeah. He was taken by this. It's just like funny to say this stuff. He was taken by this alien race called the Shi'ar, and he was supposed to marry the queen. He's conscious. They saved him. But someone says, like, oh, if you really are loyal to us, then erase all your memories of the humans. And he learned about Gambit's death and other stuff, and he's just like, nah, I'm a dip. And he decides to go back to Earth. So he gets to Earth, he's back with the X-Men, but you can imagine that, there's some distrust, because he could have came back before, but he didn't. So there's some animosity between them. And Magneto comes back, sees that Charles is back and learns of, all that stuff. And he basically says like, nah, dude, I tried your way, but it's over. And Rogue ends up joining Magneto, and so does this other mutant named Roberto. And they go with Magneto, and Magneto revives this asteroid M. He brings it up from the water and takes it into the skies. And so that's kind of where that I think I mentioned the asteroid M at the very beginning, but that's where that kind of came from. Now, uh, some of my final thoughts here would be there's some really awesome scenes that end off this show. The last like 2 episodes or 3 episodes, especially, like there's so many scenes in which I could just replay. There's a scene where Magneto rips the adamantium out of Wolverine's body. Like they're like fighting each other, and he literally, through using his powers, rips adamantium metal from Wolverine's skeleton, and now he's a human, and he's like trying to recover and stuff. And that scene, it was graphic and it was like really well animated. It actually matched the cover or the actual page of a comic book that played the same scene where he did that. So they actually did that on screen. The other thing is, again, Cyclops and his leadership capabilities. He comes up with this like concept of like a blue team and a gold team, and he splits them up, and one of them goes against Mr. Sinister and Bastion. The other goes against Magneto on Asteroid M, because Magneto is taking the asteroid and he's gonna hit the Earth. And he's just done. Like I'm done with all this happening. So again, like Cyclops' capabilities as a leader, even though he wasn't given the title, but because it was given to Magneto technically, but showcasing that, I think again, it just gave him his due respect. The last thing would be the ending of X-Men 97, which sets up a lot for the future. It's made apparent that Apocalypse, yes, the same Apocalypse from the Apocalypse movie, which hopefully will be done much better in this case, is going to be the next villain. And the X-Men are actually transported throughout time and they're split up. So, excuse me. Man, I am not used to talking for like this amount of time. So that's why I keep coughing or like having to take a breath. It's a fun challenge here. Anyways, back to the ending. So yeah, they're split up throughout time, and you see that they meet the past and present and future version of Apocalypse. And so some of the characters, they meet this kid named Nathan in the future. I think Jean and Scott meet Nathan, who's their son, who they sent in the future. So they are transported in the future and they meet him. Some of them meet this character of Apocalypse, but they meet him in the past, like way back in the Pharaoh's time. And then in the present time, you see Apocalypse, the actual villain, show up in Genosha. And he just says, like, so much pain. And he has one of the cards from Gambit. So it's like foreshadowing perhaps that Gambit is coming back. Hopefully. Because I really loved his arc in the first season, and it would be awesome to have him back. But those are my thoughts on X-Men 97. I really hope that you guys enjoyed them. Please let me know what you think. Again, like when I promote it, you can check out my link tree. It has the form where you can fill out your thoughts. It has the SpeakPipe website where you can share a voice note up to 2 minutes of your thoughts. I'd love to incorporate them into future episodes. Let me know what you guys think. Did you like X-Men 97? Did you watch it yet? Are you planning to? Or was it a disappointment for you? Which I don't think that's the case for many people. But, I was watching some like reviews of X-Men 97 from like people, and they pick on like the littlest things which I would never think of, like certain leadership things from leadership characteristics that are lacking from Scott, like oh, he's being such a childish selfish person because he just wants to worry about himself as the leader of the X-Men. I'm not getting to that point. All right, my man was done well in this series. So yeah, like people can pick on a lot of stuff, and that's fine if you do. Like if you get to that point of where you want to pick out all the little things, and that's why you didn't end up liking it, that's your choice. So yeah, let me know what you think. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And episode 4, I don't yet know what it's going to be about, but it'll be exciting. So listen next time. Thank you.